It's Dr. J here in the house with Evan Brand. Today, we're going to be talking about the signs and solutions of gut inflammation and gut permeability, or leaky gut for short. Really exciting topic. We see it a lot in our patients every single day. Evan, how are we doing today, man?
Hey, I'm doing really well. I can't remember if we covered this on the podcast or not, this specific study, but there was a paper that came out all about leaky gut and worsening outcomes with the virus. And so people could put in the what virus in PubMed and leaky gut. And we're finding that a lot of people with leaky gut, that's actually one of the precursors. And that's what's leading to worse outcomes. So this is more important. It's always important, but this is more important now because we know that there's a massive link. And I'll actually pull this up here and I'll show you this. American Society for Microbiology, they did this. Did we talk about this yet or not?
Let's talk about it. Let's go at it.
This particular paper. Did that
Let's bring it up
there?
Let me check here. Oh, yeah. Let me add it on. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there we go. So poor gut health connected to severe blank. New research shows. And long story short, you can go into this microbiology article. But long story short, they actually show a picture too. Let me see if I can get to that picture. Yeah, here we go. That was the picture. I think we already showed this picture, but forgive me. And people listening on audio, basically we're just showing that viral particles with a leaky gut are going to be able to get into the circulation, and that's going to increase your inflammatory response. So the real goal of today is making sure that your gut is in good shape, because therefore you're not going to have leakage into your circulation. You're going to fare far, far better if you have that healthy gut barrier. So that was the really kind of the spark notes of that, but that's like a 19-page paper that you can dive into. And many people, I think, have thought of leaky gut as kind of a trendy topic that only people like you and I talk about, but this is finally actually getting into the mainstream. So I hope gastroenterologists are going to realize the importance of addressing the gut, and I hope they actually start taking it more seriously. Right now, it's just antibiotics, and that's really the only thing that gastroenterologists do for gut, right? I mean, steroids maybe, and immune modulating drugs in the case of like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's. But beyond that, there's not really much leaky gut conversation going on.
No, there's not. And again, really, leaky gut's an effect, right? Or we'll call it gut permeability, right? If you go on PubMed, leaky gut's like a slang. If you want to really find it, you want to look at, gastrointestinal permeability, right? These are going to be the big things. It's the tight junctions, the epithelial cells in the small intestine. They start to come apart, like my fingers here, interlocked, like I'm saying a prayer. They come apart. And then you can see lipopolysaccharides, undigested food particulate can slip out. And so this is part of the major mechanism. Now, with gut permeability, it's an effect, not a cause. So I always tell patients, we don't go in and treat leaky gut. We treat the corresponding vectors of inflammation that drive gut permeability. So that could be food allergens, that could be immune stressors like virus, parasites, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, general dysbiosis, poor digestion, antibiotic exposure, creating rebound overgrowth, fungal overgrowth, just poor digestion, lots of stress, increased sympathetic tone and adrenal stress that's shutting down the digestive system and making gut permeability more probable. So these are the big vectors. So we always want to draw a line. What's the root cause? What's the effect? And gut permeability is going to be effect, not necessarily a cause.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of even advertisements now on social media for all these leaky gut healing formulas and that kind of stuff. And it's always has the word heal involved. But you could take as much glutamine and whatever else you want. You could go into elemental diets and all of that. It's not going to get rid of these big root causes. And certainly for me, I tried some gut support, but ultimately it was resolving my parasite infections. That was the most important thing for me. And so you can test for this. This is not an uncommon situation. You and I personally and clinically see parasites every single week. So when you hear this idea of like, oh, it's a third world country problem, you haven't traveled to Mexico or anything like that, that's just crap. I see it all the time, and I had them, and I was not out of the country, and I had multiple parasite infections. And then that affects your bowel flow, right? Can we talk about the bowel for a minute? What's the role there? Because you and I have talked about how you have to have adequate bile to act as sort of a natural antimicrobial. But how is this happening? What do you think are the big driving factors for why bowel production is just not good?
Well, first off, we look at the domino rally of digestion. The first thing that has to happen is good, nice, acidic pH in the stomach. So we need adequate HCl in the stomach, hydrochloric acid, that lowers the pH. And again, lower pH tends to have an antimicrobial effect, right? So if we have to bring the pH down a little bit, that makes it harder for bugs to grow. And that pH is also responsible for activating a lot of proteolytic enzymes in our stomach. So if we have good pH, we activate our enzymes. That starts the digestive cascade. We make it harder for bugs to grow. And then once all that chyme, that mixed up food and enzymes and acid and all the stuff in our stomach is all mixed up, that's called chyme, C-H-Y-M-E. That gets released into our small intestine. Our pancreas then produces a bunch of bicarbonate to bring that pH back up to around neutral. But that pH being nice and acidic, it triggers bicarbonate, and then it also triggers cholecystokinin production, CCK, which then causes the gallbladder to contract. So then you get a whole bunch of bile that comes out. You get a bunch of bicarbonate that comes out of the pancreas, but then you're also going to get a bunch of lipase and proteolytic enzymes, trypsin, chymotrypsin, lipase, lipolytic enzymes coming out of the pancreas as well. So then you brings the pH back up, you add the fat digestive enzymes, the proteolytic enzymes, and then you also stimulate that bile production, which then emulsifies that fat. Think of emulsification as you have a nice greasy pan where you cook some bacon on, right? Throw it under water, you feel the fat on the pan, throw some Dawn soap on there, it emulsifies it, it breaks that up, so then you can get it all out of the intestinal tract and be able to absorb it, carry it on micelles, and be able to use it for lipid bilayer, hair, skin, nail, energy, all that stuff. Prostaglandins.
Wow. Yeah, well said. And so bile is produced by your liver, but it's stored in your gallbladder. So people that have had their gallbladders removed, which is a very common surgery, a lot of surgeons are very happy to remove gallbladders. I think in many cases they may have been saved with fixing these other upstream issues, but well, once it's gone, it's gone. So people listening that have no gallbladder, you have to take that into consideration. There was a study here in 2018. It was in the Annals of Gastroenterology. It found that poor bile flow can contribute to the development of inflammatory bowel disease. So you're really setting yourself up. And we find all the time with people clinically, when they come in, they've had gallbladder removal, we see a lot of gut issues. We see massive bacterial overgrowth problems in these people. And I think that's partly due to not having enough bile being stored anymore. Like you and I've talked about it before. I think you said it was a 10x concentration in the gallbladder. Is that right?
Yeah,
That's
10, 15x. Yeah.
So you're missing out on that. When you have just liver production, you don't have that storage facility. I mean, you have some bile, but just nowhere near what you would have had if you had your gallbladder. So please try to save your gallbladders. You got to fix these upstream infections, because that's going to be, and get off proton pump inhibitors with the help of your doctor if you can, because we know that that suppression of stomach acid is going to lead to the overgrowth, which then fuels these downstream issues to not happen. The domino effect, it literally gets stopped or prevented by the PPIs.
100%. And so we need good, think of bile. It's an emulsifier. It breaks down fat. It's also an antimicrobial. And so we create antimicrobial environments by having good, nice low pH, by having good enzyme and acid levels. That also helps. And then also by having good bile output. And plus, the longer that food sits there and rots and putrefies, because we are not breaking it down into its constituent parts, right? Then it's going to create putrefaction, fermentation, rancidification. Essentially, proteins and fats and carbs are rotting, right? And then you can get gas and bloating, and that just creates this incredible breeding ground for bugs to grow. It's like you can have this beautiful home that you take care of, but if you leave the garbage in there like a week too long, it's going to get like stinky, and then you're going to get a whole bunch of bugs attracted to it, right? Same kind of thing in our microbiome. So it's really important that we stay on top of, those good health practices.
Let's hit the symptoms and signs and symptoms, because people know most of the gut ones, but there are some that you and I find clinically that maybe people wouldn't think are a gut symptom, right? It might not manifest outside of that. So we can cover this stuff like unusual color, texture, smell, messy poops. You have floating stool. You have maybe alternating diarrhea, constipation, bloating, gut pain. But what about like skin issues? And what about anxiety and depression and hormonal imbalances and brain fog? I mean, you and I have seen, we lost count how many times we've seen cases where we simply just fix the gut and all of a sudden this depression is lifted. I had one client named Miranda who she had been depressed for, she said, quote, 20 plus years. All we did is do a gut protocol. I gave her no antidepressant herbs. We simply just did a gut protocol. And when we did a 6-week follow-up, she said her depression was 90% better. And when she said 90% better, she didn't even sound too excited. And I said, are you realizing what you just said to me? You've been depressed for over 20 years and you're 90% less depressed in 6 weeks of doing a gut protocol. Like, do you realize how profound that is? And she goes, oh yeah, I guess that is amazing. Thank you. And so I think people, they get so used to feeling a certain way that when the clouds lift, they're almost not even ready for it. But depression, anxiety, I would put at the top of the list for mental health issues connected to these gut inflammation problems. I will tell you, and you and I discussed this. I remember calling you one night years ago. This is probably like coming up on, it'd be 6-7 years ago. It was like 2014, 2015. And I was like, man, I'm having like a panic episode or something. And this was when I was living down in Austin. And it was H. pylori. It was driving that, because as soon as I cleared the H. pylori, all those weird episodes of panic completely disappeared. And I've seen that more than just the N=1 me. I've seen it many, many times. So if you have anxiety problems, you go to the psychiatrist. They're not going to suggest you have gut infections, but that's something you need to be thinking about.
100%. Yep. 110% for sure. Anything else you want to add in that topic?
If you've got mental health issues, look in the gut. Maybe even look in the gut before you look in the brain. Now, obviously, we're going to be doing organic acids testing and other things to look at neurotransmitters. So we're going to check out dopamine, serotonin. We're going to look at what's called quinolinic acid. So we can look for actually brain inflammation or brain toxicity related to gut infections. Like sometimes Clostridia, we'll see will drive up the quinolinic acid markers, but we still have to fix the gut. So if you have a family member, they're anxious, they're depressed, they're fatigued, we've seen a massive link between chronic fatigue and gut infection. So there's another big one that people may not recognize. The gastrodoc may not suggest your chronic fatigue is from a gut infection, but it certainly can be. Skin issues as well. My skin was a wreck years ago. I had major acne, even though my diet was clean. It was my gut.
Totally. I also want to highlight one other kind of variable here. I think it's really important. I'm going to pull this on screen here. I think this is really interesting. So interesting abstract here, and it's looking at the influences on the gut microbiome on inflammation and insulin resistance. So this is interesting because we talk about insulin resistance, right? Consuming too much carbohydrate and refined sugar. All carbohydrate gets broken down typically into glucose, fructose, or a combination of the two, right? And so the more sugar that gets released into our bloodstream that gets broken down, whether from refined sugar, sucrose, which is fructose in glucose, high fructose corn syrup is fructose in glucose, 55, 45 concentrations. And then, of course, we have starches, which get primarily broken down on the glucose. And then we have fruit, which is more on the fructose side. These things all have an impact on our blood sugar. And the more insulin resistant we become, it drives inflammation. It's hard to utilize these fuel sources, and these fuel sources get deposited in our fat because our muscles don't have the ability to store it. Our liver loses the ability to store it. We don't have the activity level. We don't have the mitochondria stimulation to burn it. So we store it as fat. Now, this article is interesting. It talks about obesity is the main condition that's correlated with the appearance of insulin resistance. Think of this is when your cells get numb to insulin. Now, this is on screen here. People that are looking on the audio version, we'll put the link below for the whole video. Whole bacteria, their byproducts and metabolites undergo increased translocation through the gut epithelium. Let me give you the translation on that. Here's your gut. Leaky gut happens, right? It's where it talks about gut permeability, and things start to translocate, meaning move from the inside of the gut back into the bloodstream. Right? So it translocates through the gut epithelium into circulation due to the degradation of tight junctions. This is leaky gut right here. And it increases intestinal permeability that culminates in inflammation and insulin resistance. So what's this saying is the inflammation caused by gut permeability, caused by lack of enzymes, acids, bile, food allergens, all the gut microbiome issues can actually drive inflammation and insulin resistance. Now it makes it harder for your mitochondria to generate fuel, because you're not able to get that fuel into your cell, and you start to become more of a sugar burner. It's very difficult to burn fat when you have high levels of insulin. Very, very difficult. So several strategies focusing on modulation of the gut microbiome using antibiotics. Again, we would use antimicrobial herbs, probiotics, and prebiotic fibers are being experimentally used to in order to reduce intestinal permeability, increase the production of short-chain fatty acids. Guess what? Things like butter, butyric acid, medium chain triglycerides, those are all very helpful. And again, this helps promote insulin sensitivity and counteracts the inflammation. So really, really important here, this study influence of gut microbiome on subclinical inflammation here. And this is a 2000, let's see, what's the study? 2013 study. So we've known this stuff out for a long time here, that the gut microbiome plays a major role on your blood sugar handling. And if you're a diabetic or someone with insulin problems, you need to be looking at the gut. Yeah, look at the diet. Look at, getting your diet and your macros in order. Make sure your food quality is good. And then look at really getting the microbiome dialed in to really help that. That could be a missing piece of the puzzle for people that have really changed their diet, but not quite gotten the metabolic benefits of losing weight yet.
Wow, that's a good point. When I think back, when I had gut infections, my blood sugar was definitely not as good. I mean, 2 to 3 hours is as far as I could go without having to eat a meal. Now I could fast all morning and not eat till 1 p.m. and I'm perfectly fine. I think there is an adrenal component too. I think I'm in a lot better place with that, but I can tell you that certainly after fixing my gut, my blood sugar stability is much better. So I think you're onto something with that paper, and how people that even have gone paleo or animal based or keto that still have issues with blood sugar regulation, that could be a sign of gut issues. And I think even if diet is dialed in some cases, what like you're showing here, there could still be issues with the blood sugar. So uh, sometimes it's portrayed as like just fix your diet and everything else falls into place, but you have to consider these other factors. And also I'll throw in at the 11th hour here, mycotoxins. We know that mold toxins significantly affect the gut barrier and create a leaky gut. They damage the mitochondria. And we know that certain mycotoxins promote the overgrowth of bacteria like Clostridia and Candida. In fact, the lab will tell you that on paper. For example, mycophenolic acid, it's a very common mycotoxin that we see that comes from water damaged buildings. You breathe that in, that'll then affect the gut and allow the overgrowth. So if you're just treating the antimicrobial herbs or antifungal herbs and you've missed this giant mold exposure, that can still affect the gut, still affect the brain, and people won't get fully better. So that's really the beauty of what we do, is we try to work through all these puzzle pieces and help you, because you could have this guy who says everything is gut and you go all the way down this gut rabbit hole and not get fully better, or you go all the way down this insulin resistance rabbit hole and you still miss the smoking gun. You got the leaking dishwasher and your whole kitchen cabinetry. We had a woman in Texas last week. Her dishwasher apparently been leaking for years. Her entire kitchen has to be replaced now. She's looking at $25K just to replace her whole kitchen. And she's been to 10 doctors, 10 practitioners, and nobody's figured it out. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I'll just say I kept suspecting something, because she said that she would always feel weird while she was washing dishes at her sink. She would get a little bit of a headache, feel a little bit sick to her stomach. I said, is it possible that something's leaking? And then boom, brought in the remediator and they found it. It was a leaking dishwasher, black mold everywhere.
Yeah, mold plays a major role, stresses out the immune system. That can create gut permeability within itself. And then that obviously drives the insulin problems. And also people that eat these type of diets, I mean, it's natural when you have microbiome issues to crave a bunch of sugar, because these foods are, from an evolutionary standpoint, things that had a lot of sugar in it tended to have a lot of nutrients in it, right? Oh, a bunch of berries, some honey, right? And they were very rare in society. It was hard to find a lot of these things. Even fruit, back then tended to be a lot more sour and bitter. And we've kind of hybridized and, selectively grown fruits that tend to be sweeter and more plump and luscious in how they taste. And so we have sweeter fruits today. And so it's natural for people to want to crave all the crap that feeds the bad bugs, because the bugs are producing chemicals to make you crave these foods. So you have to be educated and understand that these foods, even though you're craving them, you need to not listen to those cravings sometimes and really shift your gut in it. You shift your macronutrients in a way to starve out some of these bugs. It can make a big difference.
Yeah, well said. I mean, a lot of fruits hybridize now too, as you mentioned, to be sweeter. So like a strawberry, I've seen strawberries as big as my hand sometimes. Like, my God, wild strawberries, they're tiny. I mean, they're like the size of a fingernail. If you've ever seen wild strawberries out in your yard, very tiny and definitely not anywhere as sweet as the other ones. So when you hear people talk about fruit, like our modern fruit, like you said, it's not really, it's more like candy with some, it's like natural candy as opposed to the more ancient fruits. So if I can find like some heirloom apples and that kind of stuff, I'm totally into it.
Exactly. And my general recommendation with carbohydrates is make sure you earn it. Make sure you're not in a place where you're inactive, and try to get some activity, because sugar goes three directions. It gets stored in the liver and muscle. Okay. So if you're working out, you're always draining that muscle every day. You have a storage reservoir for it, a little bit in the liver, goes to fat, or it stays in the bloodstream and gets burned up by the mitochondria. essentially. It gets burnt up mitochondria-wise by the muscles, etc. So it's going to go either stored, burnt in, and stay in the bloodstream, but burnt up by the muscles and mitochondria, or it gets converted to fat. And so if you're doing things that allow you to utilize the glucose in that bloodstream, not as big of a deal. But that's where you really have to look at what your activity level is, and you have to work with your functional medicine doc about dialing in those macros. And some people, they need to starve out certain macros, especially the fermentable carbohydrates and a lot of the inflammatory foods, especially grains, legumes, dairy. Those things are really drive a lot of inflammation, and that can keep your sympathetic nervous system and your immune system on high alert, which just drains a lot of energy from you. Food allergens can make you fat, and they can drain energy from you.
Yeah, seeds too. I cut out almonds
Yep,
for a long time.
seeds, nut seeds. Yep, even some eggs too, for sure.
Yeah. I cut out eggs for a while. Greens, I mean, some people are way overdoing it on the leafy greens. I can't tell you the last time I ate a salad. I don't really care. I don't do leafy greens. I used to, but I see way too many people doing these like kale smoothies. I had a lady doing like a pound of kale a day. Oxalates were off the chart. We know those affect the gut barrier too. Yep. So there are downsides to plants.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about, how you tolerate it. Can you eat it and feel good afterwards? How does your stool look? Do you see a bunch of undigested particulate? If so, you may want to work on just chewing your food up more, taking some enzymes, see if that helps, or just saute it a little bit and see if that moves the needle. Again, there's almost always a way we can adjust things so it works, but everyone's a little bit different.
If you need further help, you can reach out to Dr. Justin at his website, justinhealth.com. Do worldwide consultations, phone, FaceTime, Skype, whatever. It can connect. We do it. Lab tests are sent around the world. It's awesome. We have distributors we work with. We can get these things to your door. We sign off on it and get you rolling so we can investigate and look deeper. So Justin Health. And then for me, Evan Brand, it's evanbrand.com. You can reach out, and we're both happy to help you. We love what we do. We're very blessed for the opportunity to be in the trenches. We're always improving our own health. We work on our families, our children. We work on everybody around us. We're always trying to improve them. And then to be able to do it clinically too is just great. We learned so much from you all, and we like to be the shining light in a world of darkness where people have been to countless practitioners, and the stuff that to you and I is just common everyday conversation, functional medicine stuff. This stuff to some people is like, wow, why has nobody ever mentioned that to me before? And for us, it's like, oh yeah, we do it with everyone. So we look forward to helping you uncover your root causes. If you have gut inflammation, what's going on? There's something under it. So don't give up, keep pushing forward, and please reach out if you need help. We'd love to help you.
Yeah, evanbrand.com. Work at Evan, Dr. J, justinhealth.com. Work with me. We are here for you guys. And put your comments down below. Let us know the different things that you guys are applying, what's working, what's not. And if you get overwhelmed listening to this, try to take at least one action item out of it. I would say action items from a supplement standpoint. We'll put our recommended supplements down below. We have different hydrochloric acid and enzyme support products that we'll put down below for links. That's always low-hanging fruit. Again, diet-wise, a good autoimmune lower FODMAP diet can be a really good starting point. And I would say for liver gallbladder, we have our different formulas. I have one called Liver Supreme. And again, some of the hallmark nutrients in these products are going to be bile, phosphatidylcholine, taurine. Some products will have things like TUGCA, which can be very helpful for biliary flow. Beetroot can be really helpful. If I didn't mention ox biles, these are all maybe some milk thistle, very supportive for liver gallbladder function, liver gallbladder flow. So very beneficial. We'll put the links down below. So if you guys enjoy the information and you want to take action, feel free to take a look at some of those links and support the show by grabbing some of those products. And Evan will have his links down below as well. Anything else, Evan, you want to add?
I think that's it. We gave people the links. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. If you're listening on Apple, that's probably where most people find us. If you're looking up Justin's show, make sure you're subscribed there, or my show, Evan Brand. We don't care how you're listening. Obviously we cross-pollinate. We put these on each other's. So make sure you're subscribed to both of them so you don't miss it. And we appreciate it. Give us a review too. I think we should probably do a giveaway. I know some people do giveaways, so we can give away a book or, free supplement or something. But in the meantime, give us a 5-star review on Apple. We would love it. That's how we stay up in the rankings so that we can actually share true functional medicine education to the masses. Because right now, still a lot of people that are in the top charts, just theory. They're not clinicians. They're not in the trenches every day, all day. I mean, we look at an exhaustive amount of lab testing that helps us to really dial the stuff we're saying in. We then sprinkle in some studies and we stay up on the research, but you could keep your head in the research all day and totally miss what actually works. And it's all about what actually gets people the results. So keep that in mind and make sure you're subscribed. Give us a review on Apple. We'll love you forever. Thank you.
110%. All the links will be below for you guys. All right. Thanks a lot, Evan. Great chatting with you, man. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.